Hello everybody and welcome back to Kerbal Space Program, where off camera, for the sake of time, I've set up our outpost here, our science independent research, I forget what it's called. I've set all of this up off camera for the sake of time, and now we need to, of course, we need to get our equipment back before we have that replication bug. So let's just hop over to Halton here, and we'll hand that on over. Perfect. And we're just about done setting up our Duna outpost. We need to get both of these guys inside. Come on. There we go. Go ahead and grab and hop in. Fantastic. Okay, and now for Heighten. Down you go. There we go. Cool. So we're going to hop in here as well. And there we go. Perfect. So now we're going to need to transfer our crew, of course. We'll transfer Alice up over to here, and then we'll transfer Heighten over to the science lab. There we go. We're going to need to store some science in the science lab, and I've reloaded this, so this should be extendable now, and indeed it is. Perfect. So the thermal efficiency will get a lot better. That's excellent. And now we, of course, need to transfer some science experiments in. So the magnetometer boom here, let's just go ahead and review that data, process that in the lab. That's 433 data right there. And then we'll go ahead and review our mystery goo data. There's another 96. And then perhaps the barometer data. 116. That puts us at 645. We actually still have another 100. So the negative gravioli detector, that's 192 data. What about the seismic accelerometer? That's 220 data. Atmospheric pressure scan, 132. Okay. What else can we store in there right now? 138 data. And not really anything. We'll have to wait for some of that data to be processed, it looks like. But that's okay. We'll go ahead and begin that research. Cool. So that is our Duna colony complete. Nice. So now it's time, of course, to go to Dres. So let's hop back to the Space Center. We're going to use, I think, literally the same vehicle, except I'm pretty sure Dres doesn't have an atmosphere, does it? We'll double check that one. I'm fairly certain it doesn't. So we would want to get rid of our parachutes. They're not going to do a single thing. It would just be wasted weight, right? So let's head into mission control here and see if there's any contracts to be done. We have no contracts right now. Extract 500 units of ore on Gilly. That's easy enough. We'll do that. No problem. And what else do we have here? Nothing really that we want to do. Okay. So for now, we are going to hop over to the tracking station. And I want to do two things. First, I want to hop over to Dres as our focus. No kind of atmosphere. Okay, that's what I wanted to know. Secondly, I want to head over to Gilly and make sure that we have enough space for 500 ore to be mined. We likely don't, so we'll probably have to jettison some of our ore. Which will be fine. No big deal. Any moment we get loaded in here. Any moment, KSP. You can do it. Oh, okay, there we go. KSP stopped responding for a moment, and because of that, apparently OBS didn't register that I let go of my mute button. Okay, fantastic. Well, regardless, it does not matter. Oh yeah, this had the extended ore containers. I forgot about that. Okay, we're just going to jettison. Well, that was easy. I didn't expect that to instantly refill. Okay. That's certainly weird. Certainly weird. Okay, whatever. Well, that contract is complete. I expected to have to complete that on the way to Dres, but either way, we'll play this exactly the same way. It doesn't really matter. It would have completed that way anyway. But yeah, that just instantly refilled when I jettisoned. I don't know what was up with that. Some kind of bug, I guess, but it doesn't actually matter. It's completely irrelevant to us. It just would have passively filled up anyway, right? So it's completely fine. We're going to hop into the mission control and see if there's another contract here. Not really one that we're interested in doing right now. So go ahead and leave our facility here. And we probably should consider putting a communication satellite out near Dres. We haven't had one for a while. And that would be a nice midpoint, right? Between the inner and outer solar system. So we maybe should consider putting a communication satellite up. So that would end up being... Let's see, that's the satellite heavy lifter there. Long-range communication machine. One of these guys. How much delta V is this thing? Quite a lot. Okay. I mean, we can definitely put this out over Dres. We currently have a seismic accelerometer on here that is wasted weight. We do want to have the thermometer on there. Everything else appears to be fine. Okay. I think this will do the trick. So the idea here... Oh, we can get rid of that for sure. That's wasted weight as well. The idea behind this is just to put this in orbit, not even really at Dres, but kind of a little bit outside of Dres's orbit. So we don't need to do a warp for... Like, we don't need to do an inclination change. We don't need to do a warp for interception. None of that. We would just look to circularize it out at Dres. So let's go ahead and put this up just as a bit of infrastructure here. And this should be no real problem. And then we'll send our colony out. I just want to make sure that we have a communication satellite out there that can facilitate communication if need be. On a nice big orbit. In theory, we could put this maybe even at like the outside of the solar system. That would be really interesting, actually. If we were able to circularize it outside of Elu's orbit, like out here. I mean, that's not really circularized. It'd be like, you know, out this way. We might have the delta V to do that, but probably not. We'd probably want to do that with something like a... I was thinking like an ion engine, but an ion engine out that far, we'd have some big electricity issues. It would probably have to be nuclear. Okay, let's go ahead and head on over here. Cool. Looking good on that front. We'll just lock this into prograde. And there's our landing site, hilariously. We're going to need a little bit more speed, it looks like, with our landing site being there. And off we go. So, do we want to have this be, like, outside of Elu's orbit? We'll see what the delta V requirements are. If we do that... No, I think having a ComSat in the outer orbit of each planet makes a lot more sense. So we could actually send this one to Duna, and then an additional one to Dres, as, like, prep work for getting that done. That said, Duna kind of already has one, in a sense, because of the colony on Ike, right? So that's definitely something to consider. We're about to have our side boosters detach here. 3 more seconds of burn time. Cool. And we're looking at our apoapsis height here. We're still punching up through some of these thicker portions of the atmosphere, but I'm going to take us on over and just park us at the horizon. There we go. This should be more than fine. Cool. So we're just getting our horizontal speed. Watching that time to apoapsis increase does, of course, mean that we should enter a coast phase here. And the question is, how long do we want to coast? Well, I think it's fine to just go horizontal here until we hit the 100-kilometer mark. Let's ditch our fairing. It is no longer necessary. Okay, that'll do. So let's go ahead and circularize this. Yeah, I think we'll skip the Duna comsat just for the sake of time. We'll just put this one over Dres. We are getting to the point of needing additional communications infrastructure for relay bounces, right? We're starting to get pretty far away at that point once we get out to Dres. So I think we'll put it in orbit over Dres. That is a pretty big inclination change. No doubt about that. But this will also give us a bit of an idea of how we're going to do for our colony's delta V, right? So that'll be helpful. Okay, let's go ahead and warp over to our circularization burn. And 55 seconds here, continuing to warp. 20, 10, 2, 1, mark. Excellent. So we're going to have quite a lot of fuel left in this tank here. This is a very light payload, which is one of the reasons why our delta V is so high. But that's a good thing. Payload being light is very, very good. We should extend these solar panels before I forget to. There we go. And this is close enough. Cool. So, that is a lot of inclination. Let's go ahead and get ourselves out of... Well, actually, from this point, we have about 8,000 DV. So that is noted. And we'll keep an eye on that. So we're going to do our standard gravity assist exit from the Kerbal system. Something along the lines of changing that timing. About here. Is that an impact trajectory? It is not. Looks good. Okay. So we'll get in position for that. There we go. There's a lot of mass down here that we don't necessarily want later on, but we're going to burn off most of that mass from this burn here. But like I said, 8,071. Let me actually note that down. Notepad. 8071. Okay. And we'll call this in LKO. Perfect. Okay, let's go ahead and warp to this burn. Again, I'm mostly using this to map out how much delta V we're going to need to get to Dres, but we need a comsat up there at some point anyway. So now is as good a time as any. We're kind of killing two birds with one stone here. 20 seconds to go. 10. And commence that burn. Technically, we're a second late. Fantastic. We've got plenty of thrust to wait. I'm not concerned about it. It should be more than fine. So the question is, when we enter a minimal orbit around Dres, what delta V do we have remaining? That will tell us what delta V we broadly need. It'll vary a little bit depending on, like, transfer windows, right? And launch inclinations and things like that. But we're going to get a broad picture of what we need here. Okay. How's that looking? Not a collision course, and it is an escape trajectory. Okay, looks good. So from here, we would love to warp over to the moon. Excellent. Goodbye, Kerbal. And let's load into the moon's sphere of influence here in just a moment. We do still have about 600 delta V left in our booster tank, so that's good. I mean, we've got more than enough delta V in this thing, right? We've got ludicrous sums of delta V. This thing can get anywhere. I'm fairly certain that this is capable of getting to that outer solar system position that I was talking about. Especially if we were to replace this with a nuclear engine here and reduce, like, remove all of the oxidizer from this. That would be absolutely absurd. Okay, so we are now back in Kerbin's sphere of influence. Let's warp forward the 16 days that we need to get up here. And let's do a little bit of delta V mapping. So, Dres is our target here. We're off by 5 degrees. So that's definitely noted. And we're going to need to do this number. That's a fair amount of delta V in the inclination change. About 800 right there. Okay, so I'm going to mark this down as 900 for padding. So 900 ink change. Cool. We'll just, like, round it up to the nearest 100 is the way that's going to work. So let's get in position for this burn. Of course, we're going to have to warp ahead a little bit for it. But this is mostly, like I said, a Pathfinder mission for feeling out about how much DV we'll need. We know that we had, from low Earth orbit, like 4,000 in the colony's nuclear engine, I think, from low Kerbin orbit. We can double check that. But I'm pretty sure that's what we had. I'm not sure if that included the landing DV or not, though. The landing DV is its own thing, after all. So we'll commence this burn in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, mark. That inclination change is a pretty big one. It's way bigger than the inclination change out to Joule is going to be, although it's smaller than the ELU inclination change will be. Okay, so we're about to burn out our booster stage here. And off we go with our maneuvering stage. Excellent. Okay. So we've got about 15 seconds left in this burn. And this should put us on virtually an even ascending-descending node. And then we'll see about an intercept course. That's probably going to require warp because I did change the parameters from being at the approximate location to being in orbit, right? That is something that I changed. So, we'll call that good enough. Yes, that's definitely good enough. And then let's look at a potential intercept. Okay, timing is all wrong, so we're going to have to bring this around. We need a lot less delta V over this way, which ultimately this ends up being good. We want to intercept at the apoapsis, right? This is almost an ideal. Actually, this is very close to being ideal here. Why are we not getting an encounter? Just need to fine-tune this in. There we go. That's an encounter. What does the encounter actually look like? It's good enough. So we're looking at about 2,000 delta V for an encounter here. This is fairly ideal. So we're going to round this up to about 2,000 here. So we're going to call it an approximate 200 or 2,000 encounter. Okay, and then the braking burn at the end is going to be how much? We're going to be bypassing this somewhat slowly. That's quite a lot for intercepting at the apoapsis. So for a minimal encounter in this situation, that's looking at about another 1,800 for braking. So we'll call that another 2,000 for braking. Okay. So 2,000 braking. So that means that we need about 4,900, rounding up and adding some padding, right? So we'll call it about 5,000 delta V from low Kerbin orbit to get us to Dres. That does not count landing. So we'll call it 5,000 DV from LKO Dres orbit. Okay. Cool. So we'll go ahead and begin to warp on this. This is going to be a fairly long warp. I probably should have looked at that and started that warp before I noted down the actual timings. But yeah, this'll do. So did I get rid of this? Yes, I did. Okay, perfect. That is excellent. So we're getting all of this data back, right? That's all fine. That's all completely and totally fine. But now we have a good idea for about how much we need to get to Dres from low Kerbal orbit. And we're going to do a very similar thing with Jool. Once we get to Jool, most of our colonies here are going to be very similar, right? I don't know why we're frozen right now, but okay. There we go. Cool. So once we get here, a lot of them will be very similar, right? We'll be targeting an orbit out here, and then we'll just dive in and grab an intercept when the timing is correct. So all of these are, I believe, atmosphereless, with the exception of Lathe. We are not going to be doing a colony on Jool for obvious reasons. There's no ground to land on there. So we're not going to be doing that, but we're going to colonize the rest of the Jool system. And most of these are going to be very similar. We're probably going to work from the outside in. But let's go ahead and prepare for this burn. That's going to be in about 50 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, mark. Okay, it's going to be about a 3-minute burn here. We'll just go ahead and physics warp. Excellent. And then we're going to take this on over to Dres. So there was a lot of rounding up and estimating that happened there, right? I like to have a pretty large amount of pad for delta V. But this is very good to know. Very, very good to know. And we're going to do a little bit of maneuvering in the Dres system as well, because I want to have this be at a fairly maximal orbit. I don't really care about the inclination. The inclination doesn't matter, but we're going to have this fairly maximalized. Coming out of physics warp, we've got 3 seconds left in this burn. Should be good enough. Okay, we don't care about Jool. Let's get zoomed on out here. Dres is what we're looking for. So what's this encounter? Okay, inclination is going to be a little lackey. That's okay. I don't care about that. So we're going to do a retrograde burn here, and that's going to be a pretty hefty one. No doubt about it. And we're aiming for a minimal burn here. So something along the lines of this. And then once we get up to the apoapsis, we'll push the rest back out. So let's just go ahead and warp on over here and begin our time warp over to Dres. Now, these do take a while. There's no doubt about that. It takes a while to get there on these big old coast phases. And this is even a reasonably optimal... Yeah, this is a reasonably optimal transfer window. So it's going to be a while. Pretty lengthy on that one. Noted. But that's okay. I'm not too concerned about that. So... Jool and Elu are, of course, going to be further targets. We'll be in the Jool system for a while. We can figure... Well, we'll figure out exactly how much extra delta V we're going to need going to Jool over Dres. It will be more. And I'd like to have... Well, we'll need to figure out how much delta V it's going to take to maneuver in the Julian system, right? So we're going to be targeting an orbit that is going to be, like, out here, encompassing the pole orbit, right? Like a minimal orbit out here. And then the delta V required to dive down to a lathe encounter. From there, we would enter... We would have enough delta V left over for a circularization burn. And then enough to actually commence in atmospheric braking, like a landing burn, right? That's what we'll need to figure. It's going to be a lot. But for now, of course, our target is elsewhere. We pretty much know what we're going to need at this point for coming in to Dres. So that's fine. All is looking good there. So we want to have left over probably at least 500 DV for maneuvers. Bare minimum. But we'll find out here in a moment. So we can actually just warp this section. Cool. 30 seconds, 20, 10, and 3, 2, 1, mark. Okay, that's going to be a 1 minute 30-second burn. We'll physics warp that. Just to get that done that little bit quicker. That's Duna there. I want to focus the camera on Dres. There we go. Cool. So the question now is, how much DV will it take? Ooh, overshot that a little bit. Okay, let's push this back up. Ooh, that's sensitive. Okay, orbital speeds are really, really low. Really low. Noted. So we're going to thrust limit this thing down to 0.5%. And let's enter that orbit. There we go. So the question now becomes, hypothetically, and we're not actually going to do this, but hypothetically, man, Dres is almost invisible right now. But hypothetically, if we were to do this, how much DV would that actually end up taking to actually bring this down to a reasonable number? The answer is very little. So that's an impact trajectory there. 63 meters per second. Okay. So we don't really need to worry too much about maneuvering. We're going to bring this down to 100 DV for maneuvers. I'll call it like 150. Cool. So at this apoapsis, we are going to add a maneuver, and we're just going to push this out to be a maximal, relatively circularized orbit, right? Something kind of like, whoop, this. So that's going to be a 1 minute 27-second burn at 0.5% thrust. Let's try it like 10% thrust. That's going to be a 4-second burn. Let's try it like 5% thrust. 8-second burn. That should do. So we're going to go ahead and warp up over there. We're in physics warp, aren't we? Yes, we are. Let's go ahead and warp on over and get this orbit entered. But now we know pretty much what we're going to need, right? Oh, we have a materials bay on this thing. I didn't actually intend to bring that Science Junior, but sure. I should have dropped that. It's fine. We've got more than enough DV. Let's be on the maneuver node. Thank you very much. And we're going to start this burn in a few seconds here. Let's go ahead and warp on forward. 40, 30, 20, 10, 3, 2, 1, mark. Cool. So now we know how much delta V we're going to need for Dres. And we can evaluate that against how much delta V we're going to have, right? Okay, did we overshoot? Nah, this is good enough. Cool. So there we go. We now have a communication satellite in orbit over Dres. And with that information, we can definitely judge how we're going to do with landing it. You can leave your offerings to the engagement gods in the form of likes, comments, subscribes, and bell ringings, and a very special thank you to all of the channel members for making this video possible, including ALS Gamer, Kentuin, James, Shadowwolf, MLohan80, Kentogan, Nick Smarty, Dimitri H, Punching the Microphone, Spartan News, Unisil, Rogue Corvid, and all the rest. And of course, you. Thank you for watching. If you'd like to support the channel, you can click the join button down below the video, and as always, I will see you all next time.